Greetings, Uncle Travelling Matt here, and today is the start of my third day in India, fourth day of the trip, and I am currently sitting in a taxi, and it's one of those wonderful old style cars that they've got all over India. I didn't see many of them in Delhi. I thought they'd maybe been phased out, but no, not at all. Just trying to remember the name. I'll put it in the chat. But yeah, I'm in one of these cars. I'm in Howrah. Now Howrah is Calcutta. So Calcutta is on the east bank of the river and Howrah is on the west. So I'm in Howrah, that's where I'm staying. That's where my train arrived. I arrived this morning, got in about 9 o'clock. Should have got in about 7 o'clock, so it was 2 hours late. There was a lot of waiting about in the night, but no complaints there because it meant you could get a little bit more sleep. And I actually slept surprisingly well, which I don't normally do on sleeper trains. So I then went to my booking.com hotel, and I had a problem that I've not had thus far in India, but I had a lot in Pakistan last year, whereas the hotel that I booked doesn't take foreigners. They don't have a license to do it. So I've been to one down the road, a little bit more money, but it's not crazy money, and settled in, had a shower and that, and I'm ready to go. Today is Sunday, so the first thing I'm doing is I'm off to church if the guy can find it, but he was a bit clueless when I asked to go to St. Paul's Cathedral, so let's see what happens anyway. I am out to explore Calcutta. Greetings, Uncle Travelling Matt here, finishing off my first day in Calcutta. Now, when you last heard from me, I was travelling in a taxi over from Howrah into Calcutta itself, an ambassador taxi. Couldn't remember the name of the cars at the time. But, yep, now, so I had my day in Calcutta. I went to church. Struggled a bit because the guy didn't know where it was. He was really, really lost. And I'm like, well, you know, it is quite a famous landmark, this. But we found it in the end. And he dropped me off there, or he dropped me off near there. And then I couldn't find the way in. And I saw an English guy and I asked him, and he was really helpful. And he was on an exchange from a diocese near Oxford, I think. And he was doing some work with the Diocese of Kolkata. So I went into this church and there was a service on. It was in Bengali, so I didn't understand anything that was said, but it was nice to sit in there. And it was really a remarkable place. So St. Paul's Cathedral looks like a piece of England transplanted into the middle of India. It's this Gothic building, but of course it's not, because the nave and that is very, very wide. And so it's obviously built using Victorian technology, but made to look medieval. And what it was is this perfectly preserved relic of the Raj. And what I loved, whilst I was sitting in there, is that all the way around, there were shields of the different, I guess it's dioceses, and this must be the archdiocese one, because of course Calcutta was the leading city in the empire, well, in the Indian Empire until Delhi became. That was quite late on. So for most of the Raj, Calcutta was the city that mattered. And all these shields, and they covered 4 countries now. You know, so Lucknow was there and Delhi, but there was also Lahore. There was also Karachi. There was also Colombo. There was also Dhaka. And there were all the old names. So there was no Kolkata or Mumbai. It was Calcutta and Bombay. And or Benares, and all the old names were there, and it was as if the Raj had never died. And it was quite wonderful to witness. I know there were issues with the Empire. I'm not unaware of that, but as a time capsule, it was fantastic. Although, of course, I think it also explains why Christianity never took root as deeply as it perhaps could have done, and that's because it was presented as a very foreign faith. It's very English. It was an English faith for English people. And yes, there were converts, but a lot of those are, through Anglo-Indian families. So that was that. Then I went next door to more Raj memories, and that was the Victoria Memorial, which is this enormous memorial that was built to celebrate. Well, basically, I think it was the coronation of Queen Victoria as Empress of India, and it's huge. It's absolutely huge, and it would be one of the great buildings of India if it weren't all about the Raj. And I think that's the point, is that they don't quite know what to do with that history these days. But it's this wonderful building. Although, for me, as an Englishman, it's quite similar to a lot of the buildings you see in England. You go to the Walker Art Gallery or the Tate Gallery or something, and it reminds you a bit of them. So, in that way, it's, yes, it was a bit disappointing that way, but it was still cool to see it. And there was like maps of the Battle of Plassey, which is the one that really kind of ensured that the East India Company, had its dominance. And then there was a statement saying, that the British would always look after all their subjects and stuff on the wall in various languages. It was imperialism max. Now, upstairs, there was a museum, and they'd obviously tried to counter the imperialist message with a bit of an independence, and so it was a museum all about freedom fighters and independence, and that was quite interesting. I mean, I knew a lot of the story anyway, but what it was is the 1857 mutiny, as we were brought up to, referred to it. Of course, in India is referred to as the First War of Independence. And actually, both titles are pretty inaccurate. It was a mutiny in that they mutinied against, their rulers, but it was also a fight against oppression, depending on which side you look at it. But it wasn't really an Indian War of Independence, because I think the people that were that were fighting, that were rising up, that were mutineering, if you want to use that term, I don't think they were conscious of India as a concept. What they were was subjects to their local Rajas. And what it was is the Rajas wanted their power back, which is very different than Indian independence. And of course, actually, independence was the thing that killed them all off, because they didn't get any power after that. It all got subsumed into the government. So whether it was, it probably wasn't a mutiny, because mutiny, implies that the British were legitimately there, but it probably wasn't also in a war of independence. And I think history's always written by the victors, isn't it? So, that's what we get. So I went outside, and outside the gates had a little bit of lunch, some street food. What I like is they serve the tea here, often in these little pottery cups. And they're very crude, rough pottery, but then you throw them away afterwards. So it's like the ultimate, like, it's the first in, take out food, like throwaway culture. But I guess the pottery's biodegradable, so there's nothing wrong with it. And I quite like that. And then I walked across the Maidan. Now, the Maidan, apparently there used to be a village there, and it was all levelled after the mutiny to give the cannons free range of fire. But it's now this wonderful big space, and it's full of people playing cricket. And because obviously it's weekend, so people are off work, and I walked across it, loads of people playing cricket, got chatting to a few. There was a group of Muslim lads playing cricket that they let me have a go, and I had a little bit of bat, wasn't very good, and then had some photos with them. And then I continued on to the Indian Museum, which is another of these grand British era institutions, and I guess it suffers from the rest. I mean, it's looking a bit dilapidated, as everything Raj is these days in Calcutta, although the whole city looks a bit sorry for itself, I have to say. But it's got some wonderful stuff in it. I mean, some wonderful, like, carvings of Buddhas and goddesses and stuff from the early days. And it's all presented in this really traditional manner. And these days, we're told that a museum has to be an experience. It has to be hands-on. It has to be child-friendly. And back in those days, no, it was about presenting history. And so the lower floor was all about like history, but then upstairs it was more science. And some parts were really boring. I mean, there was like display cabinets full of rocks, which you've got to be really into that to get it. But what I did like is there was one room all about traditional like industries, and they had models of all these, models of cotton picking and production, and models of all these different traditional industries. And it was wonderful. I really liked that. And there was an art section as well. And all in all, I enjoyed it. I actually bought a little like knockoff sculpture of the goddess Tara, because I always quite like goddess Tara. So I was really footsore at the end of that. And so I was going to have a wander around more to some of the old Imperial Heart. And then in the next street, I saw a cafe, and it was called Idea Pod Co-working Space Cafe. And it's like, I mean, it's so 21st century, where it was like a space where, like business people can get together and work in comfort. But I just fancied real coffee, because all the coffee in India is awful. It's instant coffee, and it's pumped full of sugar. So I thought, they might have proper filter coffee. So I went up there, and they did. And it was a really nice space, and it was a nice space to kind of get away from the chaos. And so I went up there to read and write a bit and so on. But there was a quiz going on, and it was, I didn't take part. I was invited, but the subject was Calcutta, and I didn't really know anything about Calcutta. So I thought, well, I'm not going to do very well in this, so I'll just listen. And it was like, this is where the Indian elite gathered, and everything was in English, but with Indian accents, and the questions were so obscure about aspects of Calcuttan history, but people knew it all. And the lady who took it was a young lady, and she was really nice, but she was the granddaughter, apparently, of the master of Indian quizzes, and so people were really pleased that she was continuing the tradition. And a lot of the teams were fathers with daughters, and I thought that was really nice. And so anyway, I whiled away a few hours there. It wasn't the cheapest place, but it never was going to be. But it was nice. And then I went back, had another taxi issue. So I asked him to take me to the Howrah AC Market, because that's right next to my hotel. And he took me to the Calcutta AC Market. And I'm like, no, the Howrah AC Market. And he really struggled a bit, but then he got it in the end, and we went there. And it was tea time at this stage, so I had a look. And near my hotel was a place called Wow Momo. And these momos had been mentioned in the quiz, and I'd seen them around and didn't know what they were, so I thought I'd try them. And they're Himalayan food, and they're basically gyoza. So they're little packets of, I guess, dough or pastry or something, and you have different things in them. But what's different than gyoza is that they have like they have veg fillings or meat fillings. Obviously, I'm on veg at the moment, but they're different ones. So there's ones with corn inside, and there's ones with other veg. But they also have these sauces on them, and so you could have them with a very cheesy sauce or with a spicy Sichuan sauce, and they were absolutely amazing. Loved them. So that was that. That is my first day in Calcutta. Very tired because, well, I was on a train last night. Never sleep well on trains. That's it for me. I'm travelling, Matt. Keep travelling.